Thank you for listening to The Lawyer's Daughter. This is Jen Carroll, and this podcast does not have any video. I know I'm on YouTube, but that doesn't matter. I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. Hey, it's Wednesday, August 14th, almost the middle of the month. And today, based on some things that happened this week, today I really want to dig into political action committees and Citizens United. So this is a big part of our civil engagement, and it has a lot to do with how money moves around and who can influence our elections. So this one's going to be a little bit describey. I don't know how else to do this because I need to just share a lot of information, and some of it you probably will know. And even I had a couple surprises when I did this to really get clear about who can do what to whom in what order. So bear with me. There is, of course, a companion blog. And in the blog, I've actually included a couple appendices that are tables of information that if you're really into this, excuse me, a nerd like me is what I'm meant to say. If you're really into this, you can come over to the blog and take a look. Remember, everything's at jcarole.com, jcarole.com. And if you come in there and hit the first, it's /pace. Not /pace. If you come to the website and look at the very first thing I have up there, it says the campaign companion, and all the blogs that have to do with the podcast are listed there. There's other stuff up there. If you ever want to buy some of my crochet, help yourself. The store's there too. But I need to tell you this because it's really important. I love crocheting. It's how I manage my anxiety. It's a brilliant thing. And I do it at the end of the day, typically, unless it's a Saturday or Sunday. And then I might watch a movie and crochet, which is to say I don't even see the movie because I'm so busy crocheting. But anything I crochet, including when I've gone out and done festivals and stuff, I'm trying to put all that money into one place. And that place is a scholarship fund. And it is not a nonprofit yet, so you cannot take a tax deduction if you paid more than the item is worth. But anything you buy in my store, thank you, of my crocheted goods is absolutely going to that scholarship fund. And I put a note there on the landing page of my store. So again, if you come to jcarole.com, you're going to see all this stuff. And I apologize for including this weird Jennifer Carroll commercial at the beginning of this podcast. But I'm just trying to coalesce all the things that matter to me and that you might be interested or curious about, including even if you want to go all the way back to the Golden State Killer. That stuff's all there too. So my website I do what I can with it, and it's a great time sink for me. And since I'll be unemployed soon, I'm going to be doing writing and this and some other things. And I have, like I said, I'm trying to plan some stuff to do after the election that will still involve this podcast and might be kind of cool, and not to pre-announce or anything, but I'm lobbying my daughter to participate, which we'll see how that goes. Please do not contact her and tell her not to do it. I'm looking out for her best interest. Of course I am. Anyway, I love when she's my Gen Z person, and she's great at pointing out things that I just haven't noticed have changed since I've aged, and I try to keep up, and I still haven't noticed. All right. Now let's head into the political action committees and Citizens United. And the reason they're so important is because they bring a lot of money and influence. So let's just start at the top. What's a political action committee? You typically call it a PAC. In fact, you'll hear this all the time if you hear about somebody talking about a PAC. And you're like, what the pack of dogs? What are they talking about? That they're talking about a political action committee. And they generally use their influence, money. Let's just say what it is. They generally give money for campaigns, either for or against a candidate. They're not the candidate's campaign. That's really important distinctions here. This is a singularly unique fiduciary institution. This PAC has been created to manage money and to give money. That's the purpose. And it's usually around a platform, which is a set of beliefs. So they can do this for or against candidates, and they are not affiliated with the candidate. So that's very important. Those kind of ads can really get you because you think the candidate put it out and they didn't. The next are ballot initiatives. So in California, initiatives are huge, but anything that really requires the public to vote on something needs a 2/3 vote or needs the majority vote. It depends on the initiative, but those kinds of things that often typically happen at a state level. We don't have a lot of federal ballot initiatives. That would be changing the Constitution. So that would be a big deal. And then, of course, legislation. And those are how laws are made. And that can be legislation, typically at the state or national level. But you could also have a PAC show up to influence municipal or regional rules, regional ballot initiatives, regional things that are getting voted on. So PACs they're quite an interesting part of our democracy. They can be associated with businesses, corporations, labor unions, other kinds of coalitions, ideological groups. These are not, anybody can form a PAC. There's a registration process. There are regulations and laws associated with the PAC. But the idea is a coalition of people can come together to create a way to influence and shape our political landscape. So the big thing for us, you and I, as voters and as citizens, is how to evaluate a PAC and look beyond the funding and consider what the PAC's really standing for and what or whom it represents. PACs are not by nature inherently bad, but they are a way people can organize to come together to pool resources to make something happen, either to support a cause or candidate. And the key is to understand the PAC's missions, goals, and the policies it promotes. So a PAC that aligns with your values and advocates for your issues might feel really comfortable to you, but a PAC that goes against your beliefs might make you feel extremely uncomfortable. That's why these are important to pay attention to. And for me, I have a whole mini section here about the fact that PAC names are a bit of an unrecognized art form. PAC names are designed to obfuscate, complicate, and or in some ways make you feel better about something that you wouldn't normally feel good about. So they're crafted to influence public perception. They attempt to bias their audience towards a particular viewpoint and obscure the organization's true intent. So sometimes PACs have really forthright and honest names, and God love them. They're just what you think. But then if you look deeper, some of these names might sound really good, like Americans for Prosperity or Citizens for a Strong America, may not actually represent broad public spirited goals. And I have in the blog an appendix of names and then who's funding it and what they want to do. Just for shits and giggles, let's just call it what it is. It's just, you can see all the different ways they use the names. So some PACs use those names to obscure their true purpose, making it difficult for the voters to understand who's funding the particular message. And that's what I mean. For us as consumers, it creates this horrible landscape of crap we have to plow through to try to find out why they're in this and why they're influencing. And the thing is, it's really frustrating when you can't figure out where the money's coming from or what it's doing. And the reason I wanted to talk about PACs today is because of the Elon Trump interview on Monday, which I'm going to get into in a minute, and only because it became controversial around the political action aspects of what happened on Monday. I'm not taking a side. I just am saying what happened on Monday is kind of weird and an outlier and not something that we're used to seeing, and it actually could have been illegal. So we were all doing fine with our political action committees. They were all existing in the world. And then in 2010, so this has just been in our recent lifetimes. Prior to 2010, this was back when who's president? George Bush. Because wait, 2010, no, I'm sorry. This is Barack Obama won in 2008. So this is in 2010. And this is when we do start to see our political landscape start to go through some changes, some things, as someone might say. Before Citizens United versus the FEC, the Federal Elections Commission, in 2010, PACs were already influential. They already did a good job, but they were subject to strict limits on how much money they could raise and spend. But in 2010, the Supreme Court decided to change the campaign finance landscape. Well, you can go have a separate discussion if this is an activist court, if they changed law. They're supposed to be interpreting the Constitution, not changing laws, not making new laws. But here's where we are. I mean, I don't know how to fight this one. So it just happened. And there are members of Congress who are trying to change this today, but it's going to require a House majority, a Senate majority, and a executive administration majority to pull this off, because so many people want corporate money, so many nefarious people. Let me be clear. People who want to unduly influence elections want Citizens United to remain in effect. People who want grassroots citizenry to be responsible for elections want to undo Citizens United. So, the Supreme Court ruled that the Federal Election Commission could not limit the amount of money that corporations, including nonprofits and labor unions and other associations, could spend on political communications. So, the FEC, the people in charge of regulating our elections, cannot limit the amount of money that comes from these entities. This is super important. They're entities. An organization can funnel unlimited money through a PAC to support or oppose a person, initiative, or legislation, and the caveat is that it must do so independently and cannot coordinate with the candidates' campaigns. So this is the biggest distinction for PACs that you need to know. They have to do it. They can have a political position, but they cannot coordinate with the campaign. We don't believe that that's actually, citizenry does not believe that's actually been maintained. If we look at some of these elections, we do believe there's been crosstalk. We do believe that PACs are aligning with campaigns. Project 2025 is a great example of a political action committee that was deeply, like, they crossed the line. That's why everybody's trying not to talk about Project 2025 right now, because they crossed the line. But that doesn't mean that they're not aligned with a campaign. But they absolutely choked by commingling Project 2025 with the Trump campaign. Again, it's up to you to determine if they're still going to use some of that content, or they're going to plan to instigate that platform that they want for Project 2025. That's on you as a voter to figure out. I'm just telling you that they're not supposed to blur over and commingle content. So we have a rise of the super PACs, because, it's America. You can't just have a hamburger. You got to have a super hamburger. Then you got to have the super duper duper blitzo hamburger that you can't even fit in your mouth. Yes, in America, we have the rise of the super PACs, committees that could raise and spend unlimited amounts of money to advocate. Unlike regular PACs, super PACs cannot contribute directly to candidates, but they can run ads, send mail, and engage in other activities to influence elections. If you're feeling like you can't win, welcome to America. I mean, I'm not saying this is bad or good. I'm just saying there's a lot of voices here. And unfortunately, a lot of these voices have money behind them. And the people, let me just own my position. If you tend to be liberal like me, that believes part of our responsibility as Americans is to lift others up, when you see money get spent like this on campaigns, it makes you a little sick. Now, that's my opinion. You need to decide what works for you. So let's take a look, though. How have the PACs evolved since Citizens United? Since that ruling in 2010, the influence of PACs and super PACs, especially super PACs, has skyrocketed. They have become dominant in elections, spending millions to support or oppose candidates. And in 2020, for example, the top 10 super PACs raised and spent over $1 billion. My liberal brain just needs to bring this up one more time, guys. They're spending billions of dollars on things that just are putting money in media and advertising people's pockets. They do employ local mailing houses. They do employ telebanking and stuff. But if you think about those aspects of our economy and how elections as an enduring part of our economy, it's just not, it's crazy that it's stuff that evaporates. There is no there when it comes to elections. You can't point to one, buy one, or move one across the house from one room to the other. It's not a physical good. So we're spending a ton of money on things that are moments in time, frankly. Let's just face it. In 2020, the super PACs, and I believe it's all the super PACs, like, doesn't matter what side you're on, spending over $1 billion. That is just crazy. Now, I'm going to introduce one more thing, because let's review something else that enters into this discussion, and that's dun, 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 dark money. In today's politics, dark money refers to the political spending of organizations that are not required to disclose their donors. I feel like we have a whole group of reporters now. They're independents, most of them, because our media, our fourth estate is in such a shambles. And like I said, we'll talk about that in the fall. The fourth estate's a really important part of our balance of power. But right now, I see a lot of independent journalists going after these stories because the dark money means you don't have to disclose. And then when you don't have to disclose, you get people that you don't expect showing up and funding things and doing bad things, being nefarious. That's my favorite word of the day today, nefarious. So dark money groups can raise and spend unlimited money to influence elections. And they typically use advertisements and other kinds of communication that don't reveal where the funds originate. And this lack of transparency makes it really difficult to track who's behind the political message or how much influence the donors have on a candidate. And that's why dark money is often associated with super PACs, because they exploit loopholes in campaign finance laws to keep their funding sources hidden from public scrutiny. Now it happens, I believe it's Sheldon Whitehouse, but there might be someone else. And I do know that both parties, both the Republicans and the Democrats, have some folks who take this dark money really seriously, and they are trying to just like they should. God love them. I believe they're trying to find middle ground legislation that will help deal with some of this, because both sides do not want all this dark money in elections. If you think about the dark money in elections, it also then implicates the candidate to deliver favors. And you don't want your candidates bought and sold, and you don't want them owing anybody favors. You want them working for us. They need to look at what they should be doing for us, not private interests. There you go. So there's this cool website. I got way too much lost on it, spent way too much time on it. It's called opensecrets.com. Open, O-P-E-N, secrets.com. And it's working, it's an independent nonprofit that's working to figure out the overreach of PAC money. And its mission is to track the money flow that moves into American politics and then try to find out what is happening, how the money is affecting our politics. So they're a nonprofit, democracy-driven, grassroots, no party affiliation. They're really trying to chase the money and keep things on the up and up, and essentially shine a light on our elections and make sure that nobody's doing anything nefarious, as much as we can shine a light on it. So if you're thinking about PACs and you're out there, and now if you're in a swing state, again, I apologize as my typical swing state apology for what you have to endure during elections, but it'll be interesting for you to take a look at the bottom of ads and other places to see who's paying for the ads, and then pay attention to the PACs, and then find out who's really on different candidates' teams in terms of both Citizens United money and dark money. That's on us as voters to pay attention and to not be snickered or hoodwinked. And that's why I had earlier in the week the low-key fact-checking guide for people like you and I who don't have a ton of time, but we really want to do our best to make sure that we're getting information that's accurate. None of those alternative facts. No alternative facts in this world, because that's not a thing, people. That's not a thing. There are not alternative facts. There are facts. They're just facts. Sound like a duck. Okay, in terms of campaigns against candidates, I'm going to give you 4 short stories about some PACs and what they did. In 2012, there was a PAC called Restore Our Future. This was for Mitt Romney's presidential campaign, and they spent over $142 million, primarily on attack ads against his opponent, Barack Obama. And that sheer volume of spending helped shape the narrative of the 2012 election. So they put so much money into it with their messaging that changed the conversation, the narrative. The narrative is, and I'm going to say the Republicans are really good at the narrative, because that's just something, that's when I said everybody every morning gets up in the morning and they get that email. Here's what you're talking about today. It's a machine. I wish I could get corporations I work for to follow my marketing that effectively. But that's what happens. So there's an example where Restore Our Future changed the conversation. Mitt didn't win, but it did change the conversation. Priorities USA Action. Look at that name. Priorities USA Action. That's in 2020. It was a super PAC playing a significant role in supporting Joe Biden's presidential campaign, and they spent millions on ads and outreach. And the efforts were instrumental in securing key victories in battleground states. Now, I might like the outcome of this one, but the fact is that super PAC still did a good job, just like they did on Restore Our Future, of affecting what people are talking about and helping people know what to pay attention to, which is probably the other hardest thing about our campaigns. There's just so much. And I die when people start looking at candidates like it's a beauty contest. And I'm like, how they look does not matter. Oh my God. I mean, I hope they look healthy, but really this is not a beauty contest, folks. You need to understand how this person thinks and who they count on for decision making, how they make decisions, who are their trusted advisors. That's how you should think about these campaigns. And there's enough for us to think about. In 2018, again, this is for a candidate, the Senate Leadership Fund. Okay, there's a nice generic name. Senate Leadership Fund. This super PAC was associated with Mitch McConnell. I believe he was the director of it. And the fund spent over $190 million to support Republican candidates, Senate candidates specifically. It was the Senate Leadership Fund. And their effort helped secure several key Senate seats. I had the names. Shoot. How did I have the names? I just looked at them on the article and I didn't bring them over. Anyway, you would recognize these names. Great podcast, Jen. Thanks for not having the facts. And then the fourth one that had to do with candidates and specifically, so Mitch's was about Republican Senate seats, Emily's List. And Emily's List, I think a lot of people have spent time, are aware of it. In 2018, it focused on electing pro-choice Democratic women to office. Emily's List is usually focused on supporting female candidates because females were so underrepresented in Congress. So Emily's List, it teaches women how to become candidates, how to prepare, how to do oppo research, all those kinds of things, because being a candidate has behaviors you need to learn. So the notable successes of Emily's List in 2018 were Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley in Massachusetts. They were part of that wave that Emily's List helped create in 2018. That's how PACs have worked with candidates. There also have been PACs that have gone after ballot initiatives. And here I have 4 for you from Arizona, California, Massachusetts, and Colorado. It's so funny. When I go get data, I go get the data. But then when I see it all together like this, I'm like, how did I not get enough broad representation of the Midwest? But it may be that ballot initiatives don't work the same way in the Midwest as they do in these states. So let's go first. I don't know how each state works in terms of initiatives. I don't know why I don't. Gee, Jen, go learn something. So, but I suspect that might be the difference here. So the first one is in 2020. It's the Protect Arizona's Future. First, let's just sit with the name. Protect Arizona's Future. How could you dispute that? This PAC, that's a great name, right? Great name. This PAC supported Proposition 208, which sought to increase taxes on the wealthy to fund education in Arizona. The PAC spent heavily on ads and grassroots efforts, contributing to the measure's passage in a state where tax increases are typically difficult to pass. So that's a really good example where the PAC was able to successfully message and successfully influence to do something that the voters of Arizona don't typically do, which is, hey, let's get some tax money from the wealthy and let's beef up our education. You can decide if that's something you would get behind. The next one is a PAC called Californians for Justice. Boy, is that an honest, upstanding name. In 2020, this PAC was crucial in supporting Prop 15 in California, which aimed to increase property taxes on commercial property to fund public schools and local governments. The initiative failed, but the PAC's efforts brought attention and influenced the state's ongoing debate over tax policy. And as a Californian, I'll just tell you a brief aside. We are still in a hot mess from Prop 13. And it's funny because it's happened when I was in school. I was an actual student when Prop 13 passed. And I am now a 62-year-old who owns property. And I got to tell you, I hated Prop 13 as a student because it took everything out of our schools. Driver's ed's not in California schools. You don't get that unless maybe it's a rich district. But generally, you can't get that. In our district, you can't get any after-school activities. Our schools were stripped of everything that what I would call enrichment or real-life stuff, clubs and things, because of Prop 13. But on the other end of it, if I had, because of how much property's gone up in the state, if I had to pay property taxes on my house without Prop 13, because when I bought my house, I bought it for $200,000. and it's coming out at like 1.2 right now. That's ridiculous. By the way, that's 1.2 million for double wide on a foundation, as my brothers will constantly remind you. My house is small. It is, I generously say it's 1,200 square feet because I brought the laundry room into the house. But it is a tiny house. And the fact that it's worth 1.2 in Santa Cruz is ridiculous. But there's an example where Prop 13 at that time, boy, I hated it, but it's helping me now. And I can see why we might have needed to find other ways to get tax benefits for our schools in California. So that's how these, sorry, making it very personal, but that's how these political action committees work, though. They bring us together. That's a coalition of homeowners saying, hey, we don't want to pay a lot more property taxes because frankly, we can't. There's no more money. I could not pay the property taxes on what my house is worth right now. But there are other places where property taxes are being underpaid and maybe we could make some adjustments. Again, the Californians for Justice, which is still an interesting name, didn't pass, but it did start to educate folks on what's going on. Let me go faster, though. I apologize. In Massachusetts in 2016, here's this PAC. Vote yes on 2. No secret what that's supposed to be about. Vote yes on 2. Vote yes on it, don't you know? Here's what 2 was. It's a ballot initiative to expand charter schools statewide. And they had a very well-funded campaign. And initially, it failed. But the PAC is continuing to have a statewide conversation around charter schools and education reform in Massachusetts. So sometimes a PAC, while it may not win in the short term, it may start a discussion that's super meaningful. So there's a really good reason to have a political action committee. They focus us in on something that matters. And then in 2016, Keep Colorado Local, and that is have an end. It's not local, it's local. This PAC was instrumental in defeating a ballot initiative that would have allowed liquor sales in grocery stores, arguing it would harm small business. Liquor sales in grocery stores would harm small business. I live in California. I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know. The PAC's success kept the existing regulations in place, so I guess you can't get liquor in Colorado in the grocery store, which would singularly hamper my existence because where else am I buying? No, I actually buy my liquor at Trader Joe's. So there you go. I guess that's a grocery store. All right. So those are 4 ballot initiatives where PACs got involved. And then here, let's talk about some legislation. And now you're going to notice when it comes to legislation, and this is at a federal level here, you're going to notice, well, we have one in North Dakota. Let's see, anything else, PAC? Let's see, you're going to notice some names here. This is interesting to me. The American Beverage Association in 2014, the American Beverage Association, that's, the Coca-Cola clan. That doesn't sound right, Coca-Cola clan, but it does have some nice alliteration. This PAC, the American Beverage Association in 2014, spent millions opposing soda taxes in various states. So they actually went after the states and a significant campaign against the proposed soda tax in San Francisco. Oh my God, I remember this in 2014. And while the measure failed, the PAC's continued efforts reflect how the industry groups can mobilize against legislation that threatens their interests. So when you see soda taxes being proposed, I'm not saying if they're good or bad. I'm just saying the American Beverage Association is going to bring it. So you need to be ready to fight a big dog. But speaking of big dogs, here's the NRA. The National Rifle Association in 2013 has a PAC called, get this, look at the name of their PAC, the Political Victory Fund. If you see the Political Victory Fund, that is really the NRA. They spent heavily influencing state and federal gun control legislation in 2013, and their efforts helped defeat several proposed gun control measures in Congress. And that was following the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. And I got to tell you, well, I think the NRA is bankrupt now. But I think it's, personally, I'll own this, I think it's despicable that the National Rifle Association could just stop gun control. I'm not saying take away guns. I'm saying I'm tired of kids dying from guns. And I'm tired of guns being so big that they could blow a hole in my wall by accident. Like, that's ridiculous. So anyway, I'm like common sense gun reform. But that neither here nor there. What I really wanted to point out was that the NRA political action committee is called the Political Victory Fund. This is why you have to do your homework. If you're pro-gun, you know that, or maybe you didn't, but now you do. But if you're anti-gun, you need to know that too. And if you're somewhere in the middle like me, this is still important. I want to know where the money's coming from. The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, 2017, has a PAC that lobbied against proposed legislation aimed at reducing drug prices. Yeah, can you imagine? The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America are against reducing drug prices, particularly the Lower Drug Costs Now Act. They have successfully stalled the bill in Congress. And I think what we saw recently is that President Biden actually used an executive order to get insulin price reduced and stabilized across the board, because Lord knows we all know we need to reshape our healthcare policy. Regardless of how you think it should be reshaped, it needs reshaping. And then there's the Energy Partner Transfers PAC. That's what it's called, the Energy Transfer Partners PAC. In 2016, they started influencing the state legislation in North Dakota that would support the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. This is that big pipeline. I've included an appendix on this one only because I thought what happened next was interesting. So if you were interested in the Dakota Access Pipeline, the what happened next is in an appendix. But the contributions that the PAC made were part of a broader effort to secure favorable legislative outcomes for the energy industry at a state level. And the energy industry, easy for me to say, is one of any of these big groups. Any of these big groups, honestly, the energy industry is always going to show up with money, and they're going to try to keep their life better because they're going to they want to have things go their way. That's how they make their lives better. They have fewer rules. So you have to watch these, and you've got to get to the bottom of who's behind the PAC and if it's really representing your interests or not, or just theirs. So here's how to identify a PAC and understand who's behind the money. Check the FEC website. They have a site. I'll make these all hot links. They're not hot links yet, but I will get them to do for you. Look at the PAC's website itself. Go find out what their mission and goals are. I love looking at the about, and then I also love looking at if there's any. I will actually put in the PAC and say critical reviews is in my Google search, so that it will pop critical review content where I can see who's really arguing about it. Sometimes looking at who's arguing about a thing helps you understand the mission or the goals, or what isn't readily apparent. Make sure you follow the money. OpenSecrets.org is great. Go to OpenSecrets.org. That's where you're going to see where the money gets spent, who the PACs are, how much money is moving there. Unbelievable amounts of money. And then be wary of ad sponsorships. Make sure you take a look at, on the political ads, look at the fine print. See if you can see a sponsored by. Typically, if it's from a candidate, it will have the candidate come on at the end and say, I'm Peter Rabbit and I endorse this ad, meaning Peter Rabbit's running for something. Peter Rabbit has to endorse the ad. That's when you know it has a candidate's endorsement. Anything else, it's likely coming from a PAC or a super PAC. And then, of course, I encourage you all to read the news. It's funny to say read the news because we read the news everywhere now. But make sure you're reading real news. That's like a non sequitur now. Do your best to read news from sources that you believe are challenged for their thinking is challenged, and they strive to make corrections, and they are considered as reputable as possible. I know it's hard now. Everything's weird. So let me go back to what I talked about at the top of the show. This Elon Trump interview on Monday. A Democrat-aligned political action committee called End Citizens United. So a PAC, an actual PAC, has filed a complaint with the FEC accusing Donald Trump, his campaign, and the social media platform X, affectionately known as Twitter by the rest of us, for violating federal election laws during a recent interview between Trump and Elon. The interview, and I use the term broadly because it was more like a conversation, it was not particularly an interview, was exclusively on on X, on Twitter on Monday night, August 12th, just a couple days ago. The complaint that the Political Action Committee has filed, and Citizens United, alleges that the interview effectively served as a campaign event for Trump, and it was financed by the platform, financed by X, because he didn't have any expenses, and yet it was a huge deal. This thing had costs associated with it. If you have a call-in platform where 1 million people can be on the line, that costs money. It just costs money. So they are saying that the interview effectively served as a campaign event for Trump financed by the platform X and therefore constitutes an illegal corporate contribution, violating the ban on corporate donations. The PAC also argues that this action undermines the anti-corruption goals of federal election laws, right? You don't want to be corrupt, and has called for an investigation. And the complaint notes that the interview included explicit support for from Musk for Trump's campaign, which is a violation of the rules about advocacy by corporations. So remember, we said in Citizens United, you can create an ad for someone, but you can't work with them to do that. And by this is very nature, Musk was working with Trump for Trump's campaign, which would be a violation of advocacy by a corporation. That's a big deal. So we'll watch that play out, but that's why I wanted to do this podcast today, because it's interesting to look at real-time examples. So we all know PACs are really powerful. They're a powerful force in shaping our politics, capable of shaping elections and influencing policy. But the key here is for you to be a hungry consumer and to pay attention to who's paying the money, what do they want for their money, and is it out in the daylight? Do we all see it in real time? That's probably the most important thing. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We are going to turn to preparing for the convention in the next 4 days. I'm going to break down conventions. It happens that it is the Democratic National Convention. I don't care. I want to talk to you about conventions and how they work. And then you can use the Democratic National Convention as your case study as you're learning about these things. And we'll all look at it together. So that's what's on queue. That's what's in the queue for the next few days. I cannot wait, and thank you for listening to my podcast. I really appreciate having you. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.